I have long been fascinated by Stoicism, and I have a lot of respect for it as a philosophical system. I'm impressed with its emphasis on discipline, its emphasis on living a moderated kind of life. And I think that we as Christians can learn a lot from Stoicism. However, I do think that there is a danger in Stoicism that I'd like to address from a Christian perspective. I note that a lot of young men in my millennial generation, as well as Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they seem to be floundering, especially as it relates to discipline. And I myself am no exception. I grew up as a very undisciplined man, and even still today, I sometimes wrestle with sloth and doom scrolling and all the besetting sins of our current modern age. How do we overcome these things? Stoicism seems to provide the answer. However, in providing an answer, it also provides a telos, or an end, that is in and of itself insufficient as a motivational factor for the Christian life. Essentially, the telos of Stoicism is self-mastery. And this is great, right? We want to be able to master our passions and our bodies and our minds and bring them into a kind of submission to our will in order that we might live moderated, disciplined lives that are commendable and respectable and that others can see and emulate. However, if we stop at self-mastery as kind of this goal, you have to then ask the follow-up question, which is self-mastery for what? What is the purpose of self-mastery? Why am I doing these things? Am I doing it because I want to be perceived a certain way by others? Am I doing it because I want to feel good about myself? Why am I doing this? And this is where I think Stoicism does not provide true, strong, definitional answers as it relates to the telos of things, the telos of human existence. For the Christian, to be human is ultimately to be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ. That is the telos of human existence. To be renewed, to participate in the divine nature, and to become one with God. To know God, to be known by God, to become one with Him through Christ. This is the end of the Christian life. And so, self-mastery, in and of itself, cannot be our end goal, our aim. And unfortunately, those who are involved in the Stoicism movement and kind of involved in the Stoicism way of life, they live in essentially a two-dimensional world that does not acknowledge or really participate in the transcendent. It participates in the world as it exists around us with no real reference to things that are beyond and above. And some would quibble with this. Some would say, that the Stoics at least had the idea of the gods in a sense. However, the gods did not provide them with a path to deification the way that we as Christians have. We have a relationship with God that actually informs who it is that we are to be in this world. And that is our ultimate reference point. And so we discipline ourselves not because we simply want to be better. We discipline ourselves. We fight against our passions. We punish the body, so to speak, in order that we might become more like Christ. And if we look at Christ's own life, He was a man that lived a stoic kind of life. But He did so because His will was to do the will of His Father. His eyes were always fixed upon His Father, and His Father's will consumed Him. In the same way, the will of Christ, the will of the Father, should consume us and should be our driving force. And so, as somebody who really likes Stoicism, I want to warn us not to become obsessed with the Stoic philosophy divorced from Christian eschatology. we need to recognize that any of the tools that we can draw from other philosophical methods, whether that be through Socrates and Plato and Aristotle or the Stoics, whatever we're drawing has to be brought into the context of what it means to be a human as a Christian. And the things that we learn must be measured against that as our ultimate end. And so, I think a kind of Christian Stoicism is what we see reflected in the lives of the saints. These were rigorous, disciplined individuals who went out of their way to live moderate, disciplined lives that avoided the excesses of multiple extremes. Many of these men would go out into the desert. They would pray ceaselessly. They would fast in ways that many of us could not possibly comprehend because we've become so weak and so soft. These are men who recognized the incarnational nature of the world and recognized that it's not enough simply to enlighten our minds. We actually have to bring our bodies into submission to Christ. And so real physical changes like fasting, like praying, like prostrations, these were all a part of their life. All of this is very consistent with the way the Stoics lived. And so I would encourage young men who are seeking to become disciplined and are reading the Stoics, but maybe feel a sense of, where is this all going beyond simply self-mastery? I would say recognize it, bring it into a context of bring it into a Christian worldview. Let your Stoicism be moderated by the ultimate end of man, which is to become one with God through Christ Jesus. And as you pursue that end, allow the insights of the Stoic philosophers to aim towards that. Spit out the bones. Some of the stuff they say does not make sense in a Christian worldview. But a lot of what they say does make sense in a Christian worldview and was emulated by Christians. And the last thing I'll say, and I this is going to make it sound like everything I said prior is just silly, but instead of reading the Stoics, read the Saints. The Saints are far better than any of the Stoics. However, I don't think they're incompatible, and that's really the point of this video. I don't think they're wholly incompatible, and I think that the appeal to Stoicism, especially in young men, is a good thing. We are living in a world that is inundating us with distractions, inundating us with ways in which we fail and fall short of moderating our behavior, of not living in excess. It's difficult. And there is this vicious cycle that I myself have found myself in many, many times, where you want to live a disciplined life. You want to have a good routine. You want to wake up early and work out and get your work done, but you find yourself procrastinating. Maybe you stick to it for a few weeks, but then you're back to just kind of square one. You find yourself just scrolling on your phone and you're going, what is going on? What am I doing? Stoicism is appealing because it's harsh. It spits in the face of that kind of lifestyle and says, hey, do better. Do better. Tough love, man. Get up. Get off your butt. Do something. Don't be weak. Discipline yourself. Get into an established routine. If you don't want to wake up early, screw it. Wake up early. If you don't want to do something, do it. It's got that just kind of masculine ethos around it. And so there's an appeal there. And my only thing is just make sure that as you listen and digest these Stoic philosophers, you do so with the telos of the Christian life in mind. And you let that be the kind of mediating framework for how you are to read them and how you are to implement these strategies and philosophies in your life. And again, read the Saints, because not only are they better than the Stoic philosophers, but they offer some pretty profound insights when it comes to how to live the Christian life as well. Hope that was helpful and not too long and drawn out. And as always, I'll talk to you guys next time.